Speaker, and I rise today to speak on this most serious of issues in the hope that members right across this House could accept the spirit of what I say and the seriousness of the nature in which we debate. This issue today in relation to medicines and medical devices goes to the very heart of why I believe that the Northern Ireland Protocol is harmful to Northern Ireland citizens. And if this does not highlight its harmful insanity, I fear that nothing will. It has been well documented the perilous implications of imposing the Protocol on Northern Ireland. As has already been alluded to, first and foremost, we're all too aware of the economic disruption directly consequential of the implementation of these arrangements. And I myself, and I know indeed many other members, have been contacted by hundreds with examples of the burdens placed upon consumers, businesses and everyday supply chains. In this brief period, we have witnessed a snapshot image of the long-term unworkability and unfairness of this new arrangement, which ultimately impacts trade across all sections of the UK and draws a dagger across our tried and tested market. Beyond the economic impact, this roughshod arrangement has been thrust upon Northern Ireland with no support from the Unionist community. There was nothing on the ballot paper or in the result of the 2016 referendum that made the Protocol inevitable or desirable. And best of all, the champions of the Protocol that exist in this House portray it as a compromise, a necessary evil to keep the land border open, at the detriment of the health of every one of our citizens. To this I would add, what sort of compromise is this? That accessing medical supplies poses a risk to the EU single market. Northern Ireland's model of supply has historically relied on the free movement of supply from Great Britain, and to that end, medicinally, it comes as no surprise that 98% of the medicines and medical devices used in Northern Ireland are imported either from or via Great Britain. Absolutely.
I'm grateful to my friend for giving way. The member knows that this debate is taking place in a context, and one of the contexts is that we've had to cancel, as a consequence of COVID, more than 16,000 surgical operations, and there's presently 320,000+ people in Northern Ireland sitting on a waiting list. Does he not agree with me that to deny those people medicines and access to medical equipment is just an act of cruelty?
The member makes a very valid point, and something that I will come on to later on in this debate. 98% of medicines from the GB mainland to Northern Ireland. You will not find a clear example of how this protocol is harmful to every citizen in which we represent in Northern Ireland. When the grace period ends, shortly I'll come back. When the grace period ends, all medicines moving into Northern Ireland from Great Britain will be treated as though they are goods entering the EU from a third world country, and they will be subject to additional batch testing and certification. From the 1st of January next year, when the grace period ends, all the medicines used in Northern Ireland will have to comply with the EU's Falsified Medicines Directive. This affects the packaging of medicines, and the same requirements will not apply to products being marketed in GB. In relation to licensing, medicines in Northern Ireland must comply with the European licence and requirements set out by the European Medicines Agency, whilst those in GB do not. In addition to these checks, Northern Ireland will allow EU regulations on both vaccines and clinical trials, of which we have benefited enormously within its recent history. If ever there has been a case for the need for closer alignment on medicines, from whether it be paracetamol to vaccines, in relation to what we went through with COVID, it is quite clear that Northern Ireland has benefited immensely, and I pay tribute to the Minister and the vaccination team headed up by Patricia Donnelly in the efficiency by which the programme is rolled out in Northern Ireland. Could you imagine the disaster if the grace period did not apply for this period and Northern Ireland would not have had access to those life-saving vaccines I will short. I have to get through this, and I will come back. I will have time to do so. We have not seen the impact by which this protocol will cause upon medicines and medical devices, because it's been covered over. And I do welcome the fact that there has been a grace period, but it has been masked by a grace period. When that ends, suffering will inevitably come because of this Northern Ireland Protocol. All of these measures and barriers to supply for the proposed differentiated arrangements for Northern Ireland would require segregated, complex and costly supply chains. Throughout the pandemic, we have been made abundantly aware of the benefits of having unfettered access to national distribution and supply network through the success of the UK COVID vaccination programme across all regions. This is something that would not have been made possible without the existence of that very grace period. 98% of the supplies to the Department of Health come from the mainland, valued annually at 600 million. Despite this, the protocol would create small and segregated NI-only pools of products, with the risk that separate licensing, labelling, custom requirements will prevent medicines made to GB specifications being sold in Northern Ireland. Myself and my colleague Pam Cameron have met with many of those GB companies, and they do fear the added and additional burden that this will put upon their supply chains. And many of them, I would imagine, will look at Northern Ireland as no longer a place in which they will do business with. The British Generic Manufacturers Association made it clear that this will prevent identical products being sold to GB and NI, meaning businesses will have to duplicate resources and supply lines. Firms may need to build extra warehousing and hire some more staff to ensure medicines comply with both UK and EU regulations, which simply isn't viable in the long term. Given the small margins, this simply wouldn't be sustainable, and some GB manufacturers report that up to 90% of medicines could be at risk of being withdrawn. Alongside the cost of creating a Northern Ireland-only pool of products, the protocol is likely to impact and prohibit the treatment of specialist illnesses. We only had to look at the headline in the newsletter last week, where specialised cancer drugs were going and will be prevented access to Northern Ireland as a result of this protocol. This is harmful in so many ways, but yet we have parties in this House that call for its rigorous implementation. Now, I would like to see in today's debate members from those parties that have called for the rigorous implementation of the protocol to recognise the folly of their words. And on that stage, I will give way.
Mr Speaker, I have to wonder, if the DUP are genuinely concerned about the impact that Brexit is going to have on health, why do I not hear them talking about the new barriers being faced by EU healthcare workers and the impact that will have on staffing levels? Why do I not hear them talking about the Cross-Border Health Directive? Surely these are issues that will have an immediate impact on our healthcare service. I'd like to hear you talk about that, Mr Buckley, instead of the motion that we have in front of us and the inaccuracies that are presented within it, in an attempt to deflect from the protocol. The protocol is not the issue here in terms of health. The issue here, the fundamental issue, is that Brexit is bad for health. A Brexit which you voted for,
Order, members, please. Can I remind the member that interventions are meant to be brief, and if you wish to make a speech, you can put your name down. You still have the floor, so I'm back to you.
So, to finish the point, to reflect from the protocol is not the issue here in terms of health. The issue is that Brexit is fundamentally bad for people's health, and that's a Brexit that the DUP championed, the DUP voted for, and the DUP still supports today.
Order, please, everyone calm down.
Point of order.
I give the member an opportunity to finish her intervention. I refer back to you, Mr Buchanan.
Mr Deputy Speaker.
Point of order.
Mr Deputy Speaker, could you maybe clarify, is it not an order when a member gives way for an intervention that whenever they wish to take the floor again, they're entitled to do so?
Whenever a member gives away the floor, they give away the floor to whoever they gave the floor away to. Courteousness would normally result in it coming back in a brief period of time. You're briefly running out of time. I call Mr Buchanan.
To that point of order, can you clarify that it is standard custom and practice in the House that interventions should be brief, and that was not.
Order, members. Order. Enough comments from sedentary positions, please. I have said already that interventions should be brief. I call Mr.
I will happily debate on any of those issues that has been mentioned by the member, but today I talk about medicines and medical devices, 98% of which come from GB and are impacted directly by the Northern Ireland Protocol. Northern Ireland Protocol is not looking towards those patients with current consideration. In fact, quite the opposite. I only had a constituent vote last week. MS drugs in which they need. Their manufacturer claiming that because of the protocol, this supply line will be disrupted. This is in addition to the threat to supply and choice available to local health and social care services, access to clinical trials and exciting new development in the production of medicines, including vaccine supply, would be threatened, but at the very least slowed down. The reality is that while the protocol was championed on false premises, the issue of medicines and medical devices must be addressed, the protocol must be removed, and we must get to a stage whereby this place is not held at ransom by the European Union and that of the protocol. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.